Yeah, go.
Okay. Good evening. Warm welcome once again. My best wishes to everybody who's watching this broadcast. We're in the midst of, what is known as the festive season across different parts of India. While we're celebrating in lockdown for the first time, who would have thought that all these lovely festivals spread across the length and breadth of India will will one day end up being in a situation where we'll end up celebrating all these festivals while we're in our lockdown scenarios. But that's what Corona epidemic has done. That's what Corona pandemic has done. I have moved from a TV studio to the Zoom studio, and via Zoom, we're doing this broadcast all across the social media platforms with guests who are spread across the length and breadth of the world today. Frankly, today we're in a global show today. I got Rajiv Mantri, who's joining us live from I don't know which part of India. Good evening, Rajiv. Where are you? Where are you, Rajiv? Where are you located?
Good evening, Bhupendra. I'm in Calcutta.
Okay, so you're in Kolkata. And Tuin Sinha, my dear friend, Tuin is an author, BJP spokesperson. Tuin, I'm assuming you're still in Mumbai?
I'm in Mumbai.
Lovely. So warm welcome. And there is Dinesh Dhamija. Dinesh Dhamija, former member of parliament from the European Union. Warm welcome. Nice to see you, Dinesh. How are you doing? I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Absolutely. It's as if it's in the next room.
That's the beauty. That's the beauty of technology. And that's what I believe that the world, frankly, is going to change all around us. The world, the way we've seen, is in for a 360-degree tumultuous change. And I want to thank all our producers who spread across the length and breadth of this country. Technology today is making it easy for us to move from London to Kolkata to Mumbai to Bhimtal. And I'm here in the hills. I'm here in the foothills of Uttarakhand. Awesome. And every day we manage to do this broadcast, which is simulcast across Twitter and Facebook. So I'd appeal to all our guests who are joining us tonight. You are free to tweet about this on your Twitter pages. This broadcast can be watched on my Twitter page, on my Facebook page, and on my YouTube page as well. You can log in on Facebook, you can log in on Periscope, and you can be a part of this discussion. What are we going to talk about today? I say this on a daily basis. I don't want to talk about anything which is being spoken about conventional TV. That's done and dusted. That's the past. The present is what you're seeing now. The consequences of this lockdown. Various financial institutions, there are some top think tanks who are projecting that India's GDP could well be reduced to under 2%. 1.9% GDP growth, down from 5%, which was being projected just a few weeks back. That's the bleak picture that's being projected about India. Are we ready for it? That's the question which we'll be looking at. We want to do scrutiny of data. We got data which you won't find anywhere else. There is a lot of exhaustive study that we have done, and I want this platform to be associated with technology, yes, but I also want this platform to be associated with hard scrutiny of data. I first up want you to have a good hard look at what life post-corona is really going to look like. Imagine your post-pandemic office. What will happen? We all think that corona is here and corona will disappear one day, but what you're looking at could very well be your future. All those offices where there could be hot desks, 10 people sitting in one line, I think all that is very well a thing of the past. It will be some time before you will start seeing pictures like you're seeing on the left side of the screen. The right side is where you could very well be headed. What about traffic? We all spend so much of time trying to travel. If you're in Mumbai, you live in the outskirts, you live in the suburbs, from Andheri to Nariman Point, from Noida to Gurugram, from somewhere in Bengaluru to the outskirts of the city. Is all that a thing of the past? Will offices start thinking in terms of encouraging more and more people to start working from their homes? If India's GDP will shrink to under 2%, then there will be changes which will be brought about. Are we ready for those changes? That's what I want to talk about. So I first want to begin with you, Tuin. As we look at all these pictures, people standing in queues to social distancing. You're there in Mumbai, one of the hot spots today across the country. Tell me, how is an ordinary Mumbaikar? How are your friends, your family members? How are they responding to what is happening all around them? In the city which had pretension of being a Shanghai, now I don't know whether being a Shanghai will be a compliment or will it be looked at as something which is a bit of an off-the-cuff remark. But what's the What's the mood? Are people willing to accept the bleak economic scenario which really is staring at us in our faces?
Well, Bhupendra, right now the immediate worry is that Mumbai should not go the New York way because, as you are aware, if it actually penetrates Dharavi and Govandi, two of the biggest slums, it can go to, I mean, the spread could be absolutely dangerous. But beyond that, I'm sure all of us, while being confined to our homes, are mulling over all those possibilities of a changed lifestyle, which you just mentioned over here. So yes, I think for all you know, the staff, the additional staff which people have had, the drivers, the maids, the domestic helps, I think a lot of the work would be done internally, because I don't see us depending too much on the outside world, because our external activities would subsequently also be reduced. For example, somebody like me who has spent a lot of time in Delhi, I don't see myself, spending the same time or probably even making a trip this year, because honestly, in the next 1 year or 1.5 years, life is not going to be normal. And at the same time, I don't see my kids' school really reopening in June. For all you know, we might have digital classes for a couple of months. So I think all of these are massive changes. Yes, digital economy, digital businesses are going to grow manifold. But beyond that, we still need to figure out which way it is headed. For the next 1.5 years, life is going to be a very restricted life. It's going to be largely indoors. It's largely going to be necessity is the mother of invention. So I don't know how many more inventions we will see ourselves performing or indulging in the next 1.5 years. But I think the sky is the limit for inventions.
That's what, and we're trying to lead by example here. Another interesting individual, our friend Stalin, is joining us from Goa. So we got from Mumbai to Kolkata, Goa to London. You got all bases covered. Stalin, welcome. Stalin runs the video volunteers. Stalin does some outstanding work in terms of simply chronicling information and getting hold of kind of statements and voices which you will not hear otherwise. There are a lot of questions, and a lot of people are already joining in on Facebook. And I can tell you that the sheer excitement about being a part of this program is really second to none. Archana Dalmia is joining us from Delhi. Yakub Matthew is joining us from New York. Sudeep Mojum in the so hello folks to all of Facebook. Well, you guys have any questions? Feel free. You can reach out. Dinesh, let me draw attention, Dinesh, to a rather interesting survey which was done. And since you're there in London, and the United Kingdom is looking at this story in their own way, just look for a moment, Dinesh, at this survey which was done by Local Circles. Now, Local Circles is a polling agency, and they have been doing polling right since the beginning of March itself in terms of what they believe is going to be the real economic impact. Now, take a look at this. The survey, by the way, was done right at the beginning of March. At the beginning of March, this was the popular perception. 49% households in India were saying that they do not plan to make any major purchases above 25,000 rupees. That's what we're talking about. So major purchases, but above 25,000 rupees. That was the benchmark that was spoken about in the next 4 months. So this is the beginning of March. It would be fair for me to say that if at the beginning of March, before we hit this lockdown period, before this lockdown period, if 49% households said that they don't want to make any purchases above 25,000 rupees, I would say today, 3 weeks into lockdown, this 49% could very well end up going up to maybe upwards of 60%, 70%. Do you think a country like India, Dinesh, you think a country like India will manage to come out of these doomsday projections which are being done, that your GDP may shrink down to under 2%?
Well, thank you, Bhupen. I can only give you a point of view from the European end, or not only just the UK, and that is that people are more important than economics in Europe. And the ultimate goal is herd immunity. And herd immunity means 60% of us who live here, 500 million people, get vaccinated or get the virus itself and come through it. The problem is that it's 10 times worse from a mortality rate than the common flu. So this lockdown is actually for flattening the curve re-hospital beds. and they will open it up, and then I perceive that there might be 2 or 3 more lockdowns as the beds fill up again. So that's my view on the lockup. As far as major purchases go, you're absolutely right. I agree with you. It's 60 to 70%. I mean, you have 16% doing travel. There's no chance of doing travel. So all that goes to the yellow side. And most of the, you've got to have a breakdown of a refrigerator or something like that for you to buy one. The online companies are like Amazon are just doing fabulously. When the shares went down as the market collapsed to $1,600 for Amazon, it was an amazing time to buy. They're back up again. So all online companies all around the world, because deliveries are still going on, are doing a great job.
You know, I want to play another slide, and this is the next slide, which will actually focus even more in terms of just how bad the situation is, and what could we really be staring at? What could we really be staring at if the projection which is being done, really ends up being true? Look at this. How do you plan to change your discretionary spending? Now, again, this is at the beginning of March. Discretionary spending, 45% households saying they plan to reduce discretionary spending in the next 4 months. Again, I take the same yardstick. If 45% were in this red zone, so to say, at the beginning of March, now this story could look very, very different. So let me bring in Rajiv Mantri on this one. Rajiv, your view. How is India going to deal with this scenario, Rajiv, where you're literally staring at, I don't know whether I should call it stagflation, deflation. You are basically looking at a scenario where all bets are off, Rajiv, when it comes to looking at conventional yardsticks of this economy.
So even if we see the government's position, I think they have taken the right strategy here to minimize loss of life. And it is clearly even the kind of graded opening up we will see post 20th April. I think it is geared towards ensuring availability of supplies, availability of essential goods, and keeping operations going at a bare minimum level, so that this crisis can be seen through. It is not so much about ensuring growth, or I think correctly so, that is not the priority for the government at this time. Obviously, people can differ. Some people may think that growth matters, but I think it is only wise right now to mitigate loss of life and try to control the crisis.
No, all very well. I'm with you, Rajiv. I'm all very well that, of course, I mean, nothing can substitute human life. But I'm saying now that you may have dealt with this lockdown, the scenario which we're projecting is exactly this. This is a scenario that's staring at us in our faces. So I want to know from you if we are ready. If we are ready to face up to this scenario, and if we are, then, well, I mean, how are we coming out of this scenario?
No, so I think this can also change over time, right? So for example, if in the coming weeks and months we find a drug recipe that works in sort of controlling the disease, or the optimistic scenario is by the end of the year if there is a vaccine available. So if those things come, then I think sentiment will pick up again.
Sentiment, Sudha Sadanand is there on our Facebook page, and she's asking you that how do you secure the future in some way? How do you ensure that the future is secured? Because we're looking at where we were in the month of March. Now, 2 weeks, 3 weeks into lockdown, projection is, well, sub 2%. And there's another slide, the third slide. If you look at the third slide, which has been done by Local Circles Agency, 65% households feel squeezed or distressed when it comes to their earnings and expenses. Now,
no, there's no doubt that this is a very so there's no doubt that this is obviously a super difficult time, right? So there's working people are feeling whether they will be able to keep their jobs. Companies are feeling the stress in terms of their revenues are dried up. So how do they carry on operations? There is no cash flow to pay down debt for those who have any kind of loans and leverage. So there's no doubt that this is a moment of stress. But like I said, like once we get clarity on how this sort of comes to a close, because right now we're not seeing that, right? It seems that this is going to be going on for a long time. it feels that way.
Look at what Rajiv is saying, and I think there's merit in what he's saying. On one hand, we have this data. This is the public perception, the public mood, Janta ka mijaz. If Janta ka mijaz is this at the beginning of March, and I'm saying that this will only get worse, the government today has decided to, well, introduce some measures which will bring in limited amount of economic activity. I want to know, is this limited amount of economic activity beyond municipal limits, trying to help the farmers? Do you really think that these steps will help us in dealing with the crisis which is staring at us in our faces?
No, so the crisis at the moment, I think, is on controlling the epidemic, right? So to that end, I think the government has gone all out.
Okay.
And even the
beyond that. Yeah, beyond that. So I mean, government. So Tuhin, I take the point, Tuhin. I take the point, Tuhin. Fine.
Right now, let's be very clear. Let's be very clear. The focus is on survival. I think the government has given exemplary premium, has put exemplary premium on saving lives, which is very important because, God forbid, if the disease were to spread over here the way it has spread in the US, any which way, the damage to the economy, the damage to the society, and the damage to the future would be much, much more, because you've seen the kind of density of population in places in the slums of Delhi and Mumbai and almost across the country. So I think right now for the next few months, we need not think about growth in real terms. And honestly, let me take you back 100 years. Till about 1920 or the early 1920s, almost if you go back from into the 1900s in the early 1920s, almost every second year, India would experience a massive cholera epidemic. So probably what this present fiasco or the present crisis has done, it has taken us back by a couple of decades. But if you look at the IMF projections once again, this year they predict a 1.9% GDP growth for India. But next year, I think towards the end of the year and hopefully early next year, by the time we achieve this target of herd immunity, or by the time a vaccine is successfully implemented or is ready to be executed or is ready to be given to people, the world will see a V-shaped growth, which will probably be, many times, which will actually reverse the damages done in this period.
Since we're on that, since we're on the V-shaped growth versus the L-shaped growth, and Stalin is there as well, and Stalin, Stalin deals with farmers, and Stalin gets hold of voices which we otherwise don't get to hear of. So it's always a great pleasure listening to his viewpoint. I want you to take a good hard look at this next graphic that we're going to play. And all of us, Tuhin Sinha was talking about this, at what is being projected by the IMF, the World Bank, the IMF, the OECD, all these various international bodies are coming up with their assessments of where India will be and what is the kind of shrinking that world economy is going to see. But I put a different spin on this today. And I want Dinesh Dhamija. Dinesh, if you can hear me, Dinesh, I want you to quickly come in on this one. Since you're there, and in your capacity of as a former MP there in the European Union, I want to know about the sanctity of these numbers, Dinesh. So, the big financial bodies, what are they saying? This is coming from the IMF. I've got this from the IMF website and from Brookings Institution, which has been doing a whole analysis of what the numbers are looking like. World economy, according to IMF, is set to contract sharply by 3%. The US economy is to shrink by 5.9%. European area to shrink by 7.5%. And China is to grow at a measly 1.2%. This is what is being stated by the IMF today. But you know what? The same IMF, Dinesh, way back in 2008, 2009, when we were witnessing the other big global recession, take a look at what the IMF had projected then and what actually happened. Now, the reason why I'm doing this comparison is because I want you to weigh in and I want you to tell us, am I making a mistake? Am I comparing apples to oranges when I look at the world economic crisis, which was looking at us in our faces in 2008-9, and when I look at this corona pandemic now in 2020? Because the IMF, shout L, predict U, expect V. That is what the IMF was doing in 2008-2009. So I want to know in 2020, do I go by this theory, or do you believe that corona pandemic is a completely different case scenario?
Can I ask you a clarifying question, which is, is that a quarterly reduction or an annual reduction?
Well, this happens to be an annual reduction.
Okay, because I've seen a lot of figures that I think the European figure might be quarterly. It might be that there is apples and oranges here. But I went through with ebookers.com, which I founded. I went through 9/11, which was really terrible for our industry, the travel industry. And the rebound in the next 2 quarters was huge. So there will be some pent-up demand coming through. And on an annual basis, perhaps it won't be as high. And the figures, the actuals show that in your figures. But who knows? It's like, something in the air. And everyone thinks that they've got it right, but they haven't taken the parameters right. So we don't know. But one thing.
So we can't go by these numbers. We can't go by these numbers. I'll play the numbers of the World Bank as well for you. I want you to, Dinesh, to look at the numbers of the World Bank too. Because again, the international bodies, the international financial agencies are projecting a future which looks very bleak for everybody. The last time the agencies projected this future in a similar way, it appears they got the story completely wrong. So I want to know what is it that gives you this confidence, Dinesh, that maybe once these economies start coming back, the rebound will be far better and far bigger than the kind of deceleration that we're looking at right now.
I'm only guessing from the past. I mean, they say history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. So it might be something different. But this is a great time to get all our, polish our stuff, get everything sorted. Our courts in India, the machineries, the things, the downtime, all should be used to really get everything sorted. I mean, the Chinese, as you know, are 80% back already. Now, will they get another rise in COVID-19 deaths? Will they suppress that information? We don't know. But we know this, that in India, the testing is very, very light. But it's a warmer climate. Now, having said that, Singapore and Indonesia have had some outbreaks in warmer climates there. So I'm not sure.
We lost 300 lives. We've lost over 300 lives, looking at over
300 is nothing compared to 12,000 in the UK and over 20,000 or more in the States. And 300 is nothing.
I'm just hoping that we don't end up going down that trajectory. But Rajiv, your take, Dinesh is of the view that we need to look at it optimistically, and there is nothing that, and that's why I put these graphics in. It's not easy being optimistic, but the truth is that international bodies have got it wrong in the past as well. Do you believe the Indian economy story, the Indian resilience, is it something which cannot be quantified at this stage? So we may have 1.9% GDP growth at this time, but 5%, 4%, 6%, you think still possible in the next 12 to 18 months?
No, so I think India, in that sense, if you compare to European countries or even US or Canada, one major difference we also have is demographics. So because of the young population, we will sort of analyze all of this once the crisis is behind us. But maybe that could also be a mitigating factor because younger people tend to be more resilient. Tend to have better immunity and so on. So maybe that's something that's working in India's favor. Having said that, on the economic forecast bit, well, this has always been a mug's game, right? So no matter who the agency is, who the analyst is, no matter how big of an investment bank it is, everyone is essentially throwing darts in the dark, especially with something as unprecedented as this. And I do think comparisons with earlier sort of episodes are difficult to make because of the highly globalized nature of this crisis. So whether it is the 2008 financial crisis or even the 9/11 event, they were more sort of oriented around Western economies. So even 2008, for example, India bounced back very fast because we weren't so globally integrated at that time. Our financial system was not globally integrated. So we were able to come back very quickly from that crisis.
But Stalin, let me bring in Stalin. While we're, Stalin, one way to look at this is that I can apply very hard and very strong economic fundamentals as I'm doing. And by the way, my other dear friend Manoj Bajpayee, well-known movie star, is also watching this broadcast on Facebook. Hello, Manoj, welcome. If you have a question, feel free. I got, we got Dinesh Dhameja all the way from London. We got Rajiv Mantri all the way from Kolkata. Stalin is there joining us from Goa. Tuhin is there in your city, in Mumbai. That is, I'm assuming, if you're in Mumbai. So maybe Manoj wants to know what will happen to the entertainment world. But Stalin, what I want to know is this, and it's a very straightforward question. Since you deal with farmers, explain to me, Stalin, if the Indian economy shrinks to where it is being projected, is there a fear that those who are involved in the agriculture sector may just find that the value of the rupee, which will also shrink, will hurt them even more? What's the feedback that you're getting from the agriculture sector and from the farm sector?
Well, thanks for bringing me on again, Bhupendra. Let's put this into context. The agrarian community in India and the farming sector generally, it's not like they were at a massive, they were pampered, or in normal times, it's not as if they were looked after adequately. Even if there was no lockdown and no corona COVID crisis, you would still have a lot of agrarian crises being reported all across the country. It's worsened now for various reasons. And I have not come across any farmers who are upset about the GDP growth rate being lower or being projected as to be going lower. What they are concerned about in the visual that you're looking at now are crops dying and rotting in their farms, of cattle eating away all the farms because farmers are prohibited from entering their farms. In some places, no market available, so they have to throw out these producers. In some places, farmers are, the farm is in one place and where they live is another panchayat, and the barricades in between these panchayats, they can't really physically travel to these places. So farmers' main concern is right now, what is the government doing to protect the producers? They are compelled, as we all know, they're compelled to sell at very, very low prices, whatever they can retrieve. I think the farmers are not really concerned about GDP. What they're concerned about is what happens to their produce. And will they be able to make back the money that they had invested? They already lost about.
And these are all farmers who are involved in their businesses, in their practices. But I want to play a statement that we've got, courtesy video volunteers, courtesy Stalin. Take a look at what farmers themselves, what is the expectation that a farmer has if the GDP shrinks to 1.9, as is being spoken about? How does it impact the life of a farmer? What does a farmer want? Just take a look at this video. A statement which we've got courtesy video volunteers itself. This is a farmer who's in Sitapur in UP. And his pleas, his concerns are very straightforward and simple. That there has been, this lockdown, there are demand and supply issues. There is a problem. There is a problem when it comes to getting hold of the take a look at this video.
किसान संबंधित का समस्या बा
किसान संबंधित समस्या बा कि पैदावार कम बा आधा हो गया पैदावार और दूसरी बात पैदावार के बेमौसम बारिश हुआ और कुछ पत्थरा पड़ा और कुछ परेशानी साढ़े से हो गया ऐसी तमाम परेशानी बा खाद भी महंगा मिला डाई 1400-1500 रुपया बोरिया और यंत्र भी नहीं मिला वहाँ जाबे तो मार के भगाई दें कहीं कुछ ना मिले यहाँ नहीं बचा खाद वाले
और का समस्या बा
और का समस्या बा सिंचाई के कुछ असुविधा बा है ओके बाद निःशुल्क बोर दे सरकार के दे चाहे किसानों
5 हॉर्स पर निःशुल्क है चाहे मशीन ये है
सरकार से
का चाहते हैं बस बोर मिले चाहता काखे कम से कम लोगों को खेती हो
और का सरकार सुविधा चाहे
और सुविधा ही चाहता है कि यंत्र मिले चाहे ना किसान के यंत्र और जमीन मिट्टी नहीं चेक हो पाओ तो ले जाओ फेंक देते हैं मट्टी नहीं जांच करो अधिकारी लोग काल आओ परम आओ चौथा रोज आओ
let me ask
दौड़ाओ
hold it.
4 दिन दौड़े मास्टर चेक करा
You know, Tuhin, this is what I want to understand from you, Tuhin. That if look at what this farmer is saying, and for those of our viewers who are watching this broadcast across the world outside India, this is a part of Uttar Pradesh, and the farmer is basically saying that I'm stuck with unseasonal rains. I'm stuck because of this lockdown, and the value of my money, which I was expecting and anticipating, the value of my money is coming down. So my question is this, Tuhin. How are you going to address this concern when you suddenly will see that the value associated with 100 rupees may just come down by 30% or 40%? How does the government deal with that scenario?
Well, absolutely. That's going to be a big challenge. See, fortunately, most of the farming activity, as I see it in the country, would be taking place in the identified green zones as of today, which are largely unaffected. Hopefully, rural India is unaffected by the crisis. So yes, I mean, farming activity will be allowed in entirety from 20th April. But at the same time, I would like to tell you that through the disbursements, massive disbursements in the last 2 weeks have taken place via PM Kisan Yojana and on the PM Jan Dhan Yojana accounts. I think more than 20 crore people have been given disbursements over there. So there are multiple. It has to be. It's going to be a multi-pronged approach, which we will go ahead with. But yes, in the coming days, you will see some more impetus being provided for farming activity.
So more impetus being provided. Stalin, why don't you let Tuhin know? Tuhin will take this point that, well, I mean, there is more impetus. Fine, more impetus on farming activity. But Stalin, I mean, what kind of intervention can the government really do? Because what has the government done? Government says that we'll give 500 rupees, per month. 500 rupees, Stalin, at this time, does it work for a farmer?
No. 500 rupees is a joke. It's a slap on the face of people facing severe difficulties. It would have been better and more dignified for the government to say that we are in a financial crisis and we can't give you any money, rather than saying we will put 500 rupees into your account. 500 rupees, multiplied by 20 crores is a lot of people and a lot of money. But 500 rupees per farmer or per person is ridiculously small amounts. The issue is this. Now, the whole country recognizes the importance of PPE, for instance, for the health workers, right? The country also need to have an FPS, a food or farm protection strategy. I mean, we know that when the lockdowns were announced, people ran to buy groceries and food. They did not run to buy all those items that we fear will go down the stock market, which is refrigerators and cars. They did not line up for that. They lined up for food. So what is the strategy to secure food? And if you are talking about securing food, we all talk about supply chains about food, but we are not talking about protecting food at source. The food at source are the farms. And if you do not involve and consult farmers, and they know best how to protect food. For instance, a long-standing demand of most farmers engaged in vegetable and fruit farming is on-site cold storage that can increase the value of their produces. But on-site cold storage has been a pipe dream in this country for decades. We've been talking about constant supply of water and electricity farming. Right now, what is being is we do not, so we have a whole contingent of people who are trying to enforce the lockdown, correct? There were police and other volunteers standing across barricades saying do not cross over or do not, please follow restrictions of mobility, which is fine. But what about people and volunteers protecting farms, because farms are being eaten by animals? And that's
I mean, imagine if farms are being eaten by animals. Can I just hold you for a moment, Stalin?
Just a second. This visual that you're seeing looks like farming activity is going on. This is from today. This was shot today at 5 o'clock. And yet they are harvesting, but this is 40% of what they could have harvested. 40%. 60% was lost to unseasonal rain and animals.
If that's a reality and farm produce being consumed by animals, let me go back to Dinesh Dhamija on this one. And let's draw a comparison. Dinesh, what's the kind of impetus that that Tuhin Sinha speaks about, which is being provided, say, in the United Kingdom, in London? What is the kind of support system which is coming in? Dinesh,
sorry. Got it. Before
that,
Stalin mentioned PPE and other anagrams. Abroad, we don't even understand all these anagrams. So if you could give the full thing, then we could understand you better. I got the gist of what you were saying anyway. As far as the cold chain is concerned, we've always had 40% losses of farm produce because of the cold chain being absent. And this is where the government, this has nothing to do with coronavirus. This is where the government should make the roads and the depots along the roads, etc., to make the cold chain something so that you don't lose, you have plenty of food. But I don't know India, obviously now, as well as I used to, and you guys are the experts.
No, but I just want to know the comparison from UK. I want to know,
say, has obviously got, I mean,
in the UK, which may also be impacted.
When the Indian government is not as rich as the UK government. The GDP of India is about $3 trillion, and the GDP of the UK is $3 trillion. But India has 1.35 billion people, and the UK has only 65 million people. So they've given 330 billion pounds to industry, number one. They've given, they've told people to stay away and given them 80% of their wages. So they have to be in furlough. So they stay at home and they get 80% of the wages. And these are given through the government. And the self-employed, these are on salaried people. The self-employed are also given because they pay taxes separately. But that's, again, it's not enough. 85% of people in this country, in the UK, just make ends meet. And you can't be under lockdown for too long. So what the government, and this is my view and not the government's view, what the government is trying to do is, okay, let's start doing business, let's start going to the offices, and when the cases mount up again of corona, because we don't have a vaccine, they'll put another lockdown. And that's it.
Rajiv, is that a fear? Rajiv, is that a fear, Rajiv? I mean, you know, look at what happened in Korea. Here was Korea and everyone was talking about the Korean example, and then suddenly there was a relapse. Now, you know, as we move towards restricted economic activity, Rajiv, can India afford another relapse of what we're already seeing?
No, well, we've certainly gone into lockdown for another 3 weeks. So the earliest date right now is 3rd May. And let's see what happens beyond that. I do think we will see a graded opening up. I do think that, frankly, even the Indian government cannot afford to shut down the economy, because let's remember, the biggest loser in this entire crisis is actually the government of India. Because there's no economic activity, they don't get taxes, and everyone is turning to the government for relief. Whether it's the corporate sector, whether it's the agriculture sector, whether it is, you know, even individual citizens, everyone wants relief from the government. So the government is on the hook for providing relief, even as it is losing revenue and losing sort of receipts from because of there being no economic activity. So there is that obviously fear that we certainly can't afford multiple lockdowns. I think potential solution for that is that people get back to work, practicing physical distancing, wearing masks on a, everybody wearing masks. There has to be mass use of masks. So there will have to be solutions like that. As a society, we will all need to change some habits, adapt ourselves to the new realities. And until there is a drug or a vaccine available.
But my question is still not answered. And Tuhin, in conclusion, I want to put that question back to you, Tuhin. We began this program and we were trying to understand what will happen to India if our economy actually shrinks to 1.9. Stalin has given us an idea of exactly where the agriculture sector, the farm sector, what kind of inputs they require. Now I want to know, the Ministry for Home Affairs, which has come up with a rather elaborate list of do's and don'ts and the kind of economic activities that you can do. Can you throw some light exactly what are we staring at? I want to know the value of 100 rupees, by what percentage does that shrink? And if it shrinks, how is the government going to help me deal with that impact?
Bhupendra, most of these figures the projections that you see today are in the realm of massive conjecture or surmise. And I don't think, more than attaching a figure to it, right now, let's accept the fact that these next 3-4 months would be a survival phase where it is only logical, it is only natural for the previously projected GDP growth rate to come down by half, which is what I see it. Moreover, I'm actually worried that in a country like India, of the size of India and of the population density of India, unless there is a virtual or more or less a complete closure of travel across cities, you might just see three disruptions in the year rather than one. Because, like you mentioned, South Korea and also Singapore, they've had the second bout of this virus. And in a country, in India right now, 50% of the patients are asymptomatic. You can't expect all of them to go for the testing simply because of the size of our population. So all of these lead to a situation where most of the figures which we are projecting today, the margin of error could be big. Right now, I think a more realistic projection might emerge 3 months down the line. But yes, along the way, even as we cope with this virus, as we cope with this crisis, I can see new opportunities emerging for
do we have an economic plan? I want to be direct. Do we have an economic plan? Does the central government have an economic plan? You put us in lockdown, fine. And I'm with you that this lockdown was necessary. I take that point. But I'm saying we can't be forever in lockdown. What is the plan that India has if we really shrink to 1.9% of GDP?
See, Bhupendra, much of this planning will evolve with time, because, like I said, when this massive the relief package of 1.7 lakh crore was announced, we had anticipated a 2-month crisis. But if it prolongs to 6 months, it is but obvious that the relief packages and the subsequent planning will change. As of today, apart from the limited activities which I see opening on 20th August, even as we cope with this crisis, I can see a completely new sector of medical exports coming up or increasing for India. For all you know, at the end of 6 or 8 months, India could be a huge exporter of medical products. Secondly, we know for a fact that America wants to move its manufacturing, for that matter, a lot of countries want to move its manufacturing out of China. Who will be the beneficiary? India has to be the national beneficiary. So yes, whatever period that it takes, it could take 8 months or a year or maybe slightly more than that. But yes, so far as India's economic future is concerned, I am pretty assured, and I'm sure a lot of other people, experts, would also vouch for it. There will be a V-shaped trajectory growth, and that would be enormous.
Rajiv?
Yeah, so just to add to that, Bhupen, so I do think that we can't take it for granted that India will be a beneficiary because global corporations want to shift out from China. I think it is an opportunity for us, but we need to do a lot of work. The government of India needs to do a lot of work to attract that investment, to attract those businesses. And also on the point of the lower GDP growth, well, the immediate impact of that will be in the short run or in the medium term, there could be a stagnation of real income for all Indians. And some will be hit more than others, obviously. But I do think that this government is, from whatever we've seen in the last 6 years, if anything, they are hypersensitive to the farmer community, to the agriculture community, and they will be taken care of first.
No,
As even
on the political front, without doubt, this government has tried its best to look after the interests of farmers. But I'm just wondering, while Rajiv, while you were speaking, I got a comment on my Facebook page. Chandra Prakash Singh Uke is in Chhattisgarh. Look at what he's saying. That in Chhattisgarh, the vegetables are already, despite the laws, the vegetables are expensive. Mawa फूल की सब्जी खा रहे हैं, अरहर की फसल अकस्मात बारिश होने से खराब हो गया है. And another viewer, Sudeep Pukhi, is saying that those moving out of China started before Corona. India did not benefit. So we can't just say that, well, because we have this big market size, therefore we'll end up benefiting.
No, and one thing I really want to add, Bhupen, is there have been several communications sent to private industry, to small, medium, large size industry that keep paying your salaries. The salaries payments should not be stopped, and so on. But we have to remember, these are private businesses. They have loans, they have obligations.
Yeah, that's why that's clear.
And they can't keep paying salaries indefinitely.
I think
in fact, most businesses are already struggling.
I think that is where the conventional way of looking at any business, whether it's media, entertainment, or any other form, I think all that will change. I mean, the notion of getting a salary on the first of every month may just end up taking a hit for a certain period of time. I just want to put a final question to you, Dinesh. Now that we've moved to a global scenario, where do you stand, Dinesh? Do you believe that India has this great opportunity in the context of this corona pandemic? Do you believe India has a great opportunity to position itself on the global stage?
I'm not sure. I think that our courts have to be much faster at deciding things. Arbitration courts or something, 1 or 2 years. It's very important for investors to have an investment agreement with India, or countries to have an investment agreement with India, because they can put, if they have satisfaction there, you will see billions of dollars coming into India. But we just don't get satisfaction from an investment point of view. So the Chinese give you that. The Indians don't. If India can copy all the Chinese laws for foreign and direct investment or foreign investment, we would get a lot of things going. But also, we need to have the workers. We don't have the workers in India that the Chinese have. The training needs to be done. It's a long process. It's not a short process.
I agree. It's a long process. It's a tedious process. And I just hope that this scenario, which is really staring at us in our faces, away from the lockdown, which is meant to certainly control this pandemic, that we have a strategy. What does India do? What do Indian citizens do? The pictures that we're looking at, the post-pandemic world.
Just copy the laws. Just copy the laws and you see how much money comes in.
Well, I don't know whether there is anybody in the policy-making establishment who would think in terms of copying laws. Certainly, there will be a question which will be raised against China, against Chinese practices, but there will be those, like Dinesh is pointing out, who will still look at the supply chain side and will still think that where does my money really grow? At this stage, as we look at these pictures and we imagine ourselves, have our lives completely changed forever? And we ask ourselves, what's the value of our money? We need to figure out somewhere, somehow, whether we are in a position in which reduced value of my money will continue to benefit me. If it doesn't, can the government do something for me? Is the government even thinking about that? That's a question which I want all of you to be left with. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Great pleasure having all of you once again on this program. Weeknights, 8 o'clock. Feel free to share it on your Periscope feed, on your Twitter page, on your Facebook page, YouTube, on all these platforms. This is what I want to do each night. I want to start putting the focus on scrutiny of numbers, hard scrutiny of data, so that you can benefit and we can benefit. Thanks to all of you for joining us on this special program.
Thank you, Bhupendra.
I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.